Hey, life's tough. We get it. That's why we want to help. So that means over the next hour, a whole heap of faith. He just says, follow him anyway. And guess what? This stuff's for free. Stick with us. The service is about to start. Most of all, we're praying you're going to get something out of this morning.
Good morning online. We are so glad that you are with us this morning. Hey, I love seeing each and every week in the comments where you are joining us from. So let us know where you are watching with us, whether it is live or later during the week. I love to see where you all are at. Hey, if you've got any questions about maybe the Emotionally Healthy course or maybe the Emotionally Healthy series, we would love to be able to help you with that. So you can either write them in the comments and our online host will be able to help you, or you can email us and we'll be able to get you connected. But as we say each and every week, we love to be able to support you and to be able to pray alongside you or be excited with you. So please reach out if there's any way in which we can be helping you. But otherwise, we hope that you have a wonderful week whenever you are watching this. So Jo has been in our church for, I think we said about 10 to 11 years. With her husband Gus, they've got 3 beautiful children, some of my favourites. I said some. No, I shouldn't say that, but I did. You've got 3 beautiful children. You are on our Safe Spaces team, Safe Churches team. You have also helped lead community groups. You've done lots of things. But Jo, some of us may not know what you actually do outside of that. Do you want to share a little bit about what you do, who you are, your background?
Sure. Okay, so aside from the family side and the church side, I guess work-wise, I've been really lucky that my vocational calling has really aligned with my faith and what I see, what God calls for us in the world. So I've been involved in international justice issues for quite a while. My background as a lawyer, most recently I have been involved in running aid and development organisations and with organisations like International Justice Mission, basically Christian organisations that care about living out God's heart in the world and being like the hands and feet of God. And that's also brought me to advocacy areas and with organisations like Micah Australia as well.
And so why have you chosen to support Micah Australia and what are you passionate about what they do?
Okay, so just for anyone who hasn't heard of Micah, you may have heard of Micah Challenge, which was a big movement that happened back in the 2000s. It was basically about a goal to halve extreme poverty in the world. And it was a coalition of Christians basically rising up and saying we want our world to be better, to be more just, and to bring more hope into the world for so many people. And the great thing was that was achieved. So 5 years ahead of schedule. It happened in 2010, where because of this concerted action around the world, that extreme poverty was halved. So really exciting. Then Micah kind of reinvented itself, and they continue to be here in Australia. They continue to be a coalition of all different denominations of Christians saying it's really important that we speak up for those who can't speak for themselves. So, taking the Proverbs verse of like, speak up, defend the rights of the poor and the needy. And that's what they do. They recognise that individually Christians give a lot. Most of our aid organisations have Christian roots or are Christian run. But that is nothing really compared to what can be done when we have governments able to collectively also support and bring their action to it. So what they do is they call on the government to really take a generous and a justice approach to our engagement with the world, and in particular around things like this campaign that they're running at the moment is around raising Australia's aid budget. So at the moment it's at an all-time low at 0.68, so they're trying to have the government commit to raising it to 1%. So still that 99% still goes to domestic needs, but they're just, given the relative wealth in Australia, thinking that we can probably, as a wealthy country, give just 1% to the world's poor.
Wow, that's huge. That's really big. So you're really passionate about that. Sometimes it helps us to hear the facts, because sometimes we can go along in our own little lives, can't we, and not fully realise all that is going on in the world, and we hear little glimpses of this and we hear little glimpses of that, but to be reminded of, like, you're right, it's only 1% is not that much. And so how can we support what they're doing at the moment, and how can we get involved as a church and individually?
Yeah. The timing is really great at the moment with having a new government in place. So I work for a government agency at the moment, the Australian Human Rights Commission, so I do human rights work internationally. And it's really interesting being on the inside of seeing kind of how much government actually really cares about what people think, and they care about the squeaky wheel, and that's the one that does get oil. And so it's a great chance for us with a new government or re-elected government in place to be able to kind of put forward and say this is what is important to us. In terms of timing, the needs in the world are fairly extreme at the moment. We have the most conflict that we've had since World War II, the most number of conflicts happening around the world, the most number of deaths happening because of those conflicts. We are having climate change issues that are affecting so many people, and we've also had this polarisation. Countries are turning inwards. We're moving away from a kind of sense of multilateral cooperation that we used to have, especially after World War II, and especially after recognising the harms and the need to work together. And we're seeing countries pull away from that. Most recently, of course, USAID, so much funding has just overnight been dropped, and these are people that are relying on things that people like women who are relying on antiretrovirals to not pass on HIV to their children. I can't imagine what that's like to suddenly not have that medication. And so it's a really callous move that's happened, and unfortunately other countries are following. The UK has followed suit, is also withdrawing some of its aid, and so there's really devastating consequences. And so the timing is really great for us to be able to step into advocating for increased aid. So in terms of what we can do, I guess the other thing is, it's actually really, as I was saying, it's incredible that our politicians do listen to us. They do care about what makes the most noise. They do want to kind of follow what their constituents say. And so we have this really easy way of actually just kind of knocking on their door and saying, this is what we care about. This is what Christians care about. This is how we want you to act. For anyone in the Bradfield area, the timing is also very interesting because we have a new, we will have someone new, whoever it is, but we don't know who that is yet.
Don't know yet. Isn't
it's
it down to 5 votes? It's like 5 votes or something like that.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So it's probably going to be a recount. So what you have on the postcard things there is a call to be able to basically add your voice to say this matters, so that these cards can be taken to the new MP. And if you're in Bradfield, I would just suggest leaving that blank, that top one blank. And if you're not sure who your MP is, don't worry about it. Just leave it blank anyway, and I can just work it out from your postcode. But once and I can, especially for Bradfield people, I can add it in later once we know whether it's going to be, who it's going to be. And so it's a great chance to go in early when they're just starting up, to bring a stack of these postcards to be saying, look, this is not just us, this is from different numbers of churches, so this is happening in other churches as well, to say this is what Christians care about. Please, for us to basically be that squeaky wheel on behalf of those who can't speak for themselves. Everyone will go in. There'll be a lot of people going into newly elected MPs at this time when they've just started, and we just want to make sure that someone is speaking up for people who aren't going to be able to be there. They're not going to be able to be in that room and knock on the doors. And so for Christians to be able to say, we're here and we want to speak up on behalf of those people who are our neighbours, that's what Jesus told us, is that they might be across the other side of the world, but Jesus gives us an expansive view of who our neighbours are and who we are called to care for. And in the scale of human need right now, this is a great time to be able to do it.
Beautifully said. And so if you are looking for a pen to be able to fill that in, we've got some pens at the back, and if you have filled it in and you want Joe to be able to get them, you can just put them in the box up there, or just even leave them on the table, and we'll make sure that Joe gets them after. But we're going to quickly pray, and then we're going to watch a video, unless there is anything else that you want to say.
If anyone would like to come with me, so I'll meet with whoever the new MP is. Be great. We'll also bring someone from Micah along to be able to kind of start that relationship up and keep the advocacy going. If anyone wants to join, please feel free. Just let me know. And if you'd like to be more involved with Micah, they do trips down to Canberra, speaking to politicians. It's quite fun. I've done a few of them. It's a great chance to see kind of how democracy works and be involved in it. So just let me know if you'd like any more involvement. It's a great alternate way, in addition to supporting, in addition to donating and volunteering, to be able to lift up the needs of people around the world.
Can we thank Joe? Thank you. I'm going to quickly pray if that's okay, and then we're going to watch a video. Father God, we just want to thank you so much that you were so clear in your word that says that we are to care and see other people, that we are to be the voice for the voiceless, Father. And so, Lord, I just want to lift up right now Joe and the Micah team to you, God, as they are doing this. Lord, I just pray that our local members will actually have ears to hear, that they'll have ears and eyes to see what is going on in the world. And God, that maybe, just maybe, that our government will listen and be able to make an impact in our wider world, Father God. Lord, we just pray, as our government currently is making decisions, Lord, we do pray that they make decisions that actually glorify and honour you, Lord, that we will be a country that cares for those that need to be cared for, that will be a country that listens to those that actually don't have a voice, Father God, and that we will be that voice for them. And so we lift that all up to you right now in your Son's precious name, amen.
Cool, Jordan. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Great to see you again. My name's Barry, for those of you who haven't met me, and I'm part of the team here at Northside, and it's good that you could be with us. Welcome to those of the iceberg, or only about 9% of the mass of an iceberg is what you see above the water, and then it's the other 89, 90% that's underneath the water. And just like the iceberg did the damage, it wasn't the top part that did the damage to the Titanic. It was what was underneath, what was below the surface, that caused lots of devastation and did a lot of damage. And one of the things that we're discovering, as we look at this emotionally healthy followers, is that you and I, each of us, we have so many different parts to who we are. There's our relational part, our physical part, our spiritual part, and our emotional part. And there's lots of different aspects to who we are as people. And sometimes what happens is we don't allow Jesus to touch the emotional part of who we are. And this series was really inspired by a guy called Peter Scazzero. I've got to say that right. He's an Italian, which I like, because, Italian, Tramacchi, Italian, Scazzero, Italian. Maybe we're related somewhere, who knows? But who knows? But one of the reasons we're doing this series is this is the basic reason why we're doing this series, and that's this. Emotional health and spiritual health can't be separated. It's not possible to be spiritually mature while remaining emotionally immature. And a couple of weeks ago, when Sam kicked off the series and I did up at Tramacchi, we looked at 10 symptoms of emotional unhealth. And on the screen up there, I said, here's the 10 symptoms of emotionally healthy spirituality. And I got it wrong, but it's the 10 symptoms of emotionally unhealthy spirituality. And one of those is that we sometimes fail to look at the power of the past, our past in our own life, and what impact that has had on us presently. And this is especially true when it comes to our family of origin. Our family of origin, my family of origin, your family of origin, has had a powerful influence. In fact, has had the most significant influence on who you are today. And there are really good things about our families of origin, but there are also probably likely to be some unhealthy things in our own family of origin. And so we're going to look at this today. A couple of weeks ago, we celebrated Mother's Day, and we remembered the fact that we are born into a family. When the Bible uses the word family, it's not just talking about, your mum and dad, but it's talking about your grandparents, your great-grandparents, your grandparents, your uncles, your aunts, your nephews, your nieces, your cousins, your brothers, your sisters. When the Bible uses the word family, it's much broader and it's much bigger than often we sometimes describe family today. And one of the things about a family of origin is it's shaped us. There are things that I have picked up and that you have picked up in terms of attitudes, beliefs, behaviours, worldviews, all kinds of things that we pick up, and ways of handling all kinds of issues. We've picked it up from our family, and some of those are really good and some of them aren't so good. And one of the things that often happens is what happens in one generation often repeats itself in the next generation. And some of those things are really good and some aren't so good. And so here's a question I want to ask of you today. And as I said, we just want to give credit to Pete Scazzero because he's the guy who's given us a lot of inspiration for this series. And I do want to encourage you, as Kristen has, if you can sign up for the Emotional Healthy Spirituality course, go for it, go to it, because it will be really helpful for you. I met Peter Scazzero 2007, 2008, and read his material then, and it just had a very powerful impact upon me. But here's the question for you today. Have you ever explored the powerful impact and influence and themes of your own family of origin? Have you ever looked at the themes in your own family of origin? You see, my great-grandparents came and immigrated from Italy to Australia in 1884. They came to southeast Queensland, and my great-grandfather was a very hard worker. He worked cutting down, people don't like cutting down logs these days, but they had to do that for farming. And he worked very hard, long hours, long weeks. And then his father also was a very, very hard worker. And my father was a very, very hard worker doing long hours. And a few years ago, I had to wake up to the fact that, you know what, there's a generational pattern that's really good. And that is work hard to provide for your family. But the unhealthy side of that was each of them were workaholics. And there was another pattern that happened, and that was they wanted to succeed, and sometimes success is, you have other people talk about you, and sometimes there's a craving and a desire in us that we want to succeed so that other people will think well of us, and that's not healthy as a motivation. Here's another thing that sometimes happens in terms of my own family of origin. The wives' job, the wives had a job. It was the 4 C's: cleaning, cooking, clothing, and children. Raising the kids. That was the 4 C's, and that was pretty much a lot of the time, wasn't it? But then one day I met Wendy. I met my wife. Well, she wasn't my wife then, but when I met her, and so her grandmother was a businesswoman, and Wendy's mum was a professional, and Wendy was also a professional, and then, but in my family of origin, the women's job was all home duties. And so then we got married, and then we had to work out, well, what's this going to look like for us? And how are we going to do life together? One of the things about my own journey with this stuff, I had to do some deep inner work several years ago, and this work continues. And the work continues. And that is, I had to look at what was healthy in my family of origin and what was unhealthy. And one of the things was workaholic. I was a workaholic, just like all the generations. I had to go, what? This is crazy. Don't be a workaholic. It's not helpful. Another one was I took criticism very personally. I would get very self-defensive, and I avoided conflict like the plague. Now, hands up, anyone here love conflict? I can't see. Oh, there's a couple. Okay. All right. Well, you're brave. But most of us don't love it. And anyway, here's the thing what I discovered, and Pete Scazzero says this: while Jesus might live in our hearts, Grandpa lives in our bones. You get it? There's stuff that carries on. Over the years, God's had to do a deep work in my emotional health, and I've learnt that through digging deep into my soul and through contemplative spirituality, and I'm still growing. I've still got a long way to go. And so my question today is, how do we break the power of the past? How do we break the power of the past? And it requires a crucifixion. And none of us here like a crucifixion, because in a crucifixion, something has to die. And there's stuff in our past that has to die. And today what we're going to do is have a look in the life of a man. We've looked at the life of Saul. We've looked at the life of David. Today we're going to look at the life of a guy in the Old Testament, in the very first book of the Bible. His name is Joseph. And like many of us, Joseph grew up in a very complex, dysfunctional, emotionally unhealthy family. The family that Joseph grew up in was dysfunctional, emotionally unhealthy, and it was very complex. And we're in the very first book of the Bible, and we see a whole heap of things of the way families operate in the very first book. And it is quite fascinating. So we're going to have a look at a family tree here. Joseph's great-great-grandparents, his great-grandparents, were Abraham and Sarah. Abraham and Sarah, Sarah had a maidservant called Hagar, and Abraham and Sarah couldn't have children at a moment, and so Abraham and Hagar got together, and they had a boy called Ishmael, from whom the Ishmaelites come. And just hold that thought, because you need to remember the Ishmaelites for what's about to come. Eventually, Sarah does become pregnant. Abraham and Sarah have a child called Isaac, and Isaac, you might get to hear about that next week. But Isaac grows up, and he's Joseph's grandfather. And when Isaac's 40 plus years old, he gets married to Rebekah. And Rebekah and Isaac's marriage is filled with quite a lot of difficulty. There's a lot of lies told, lots of lies, lots of deceit that happens in their relationship. They have no children for 20 years, so Isaac's getting on. He's over 60 years old, and Rebekah becomes pregnant then with twin boys. And she has two boys, and the first boy is Esau, and Esau becomes a skillful hunter, but he denies his birthright. He doesn't value his inheritance as the firstborn, and he trades it for a meal. And Jacob gets the birthright. And Jacob, his name means deceiver, manipulator. How would you like to be called that? How would you like to have that as the meaning of your name? Deceiver, manipulator. But that's the name of Jacob. Jacob has that name. And so Jacob has this name of a cheat, deceiver, manipulator, liar. And Jacob is a homeboy who loves to stay at home, but he also is getting into trouble. Pete Scazzaro says this, and it's true. When you look at the life of Jacob, he's either getting into trouble, just getting out of trouble, or just about to stir up some trouble. Anyone know anyone like that in families of origin? Don't nudge someone or say who it is, but some of you might be thinking of someone who comes to mind. But here's what happens. He wants to get married, and he meets this beautiful girl called Rachel, and this is his uncle's daughter, and he wants to marry Rachel, so he works for 7 hard years. This is the price he has to pay to marry this girl, Rachel. We're talking Bible times, right? And so we go back, and so he works 7 years, and then he thinks he's going to marry Rachel, but then Laban, his uncle, does a switcheroony with the two girls, and he ends up being married to Leah, and he's really upset because someone's deceived him, and yet he himself has been a deceiver and a liar and a manipulator, and so he's getting a bit of his own medicine back. And then the next thing happens is this. He marries Leah and her maid, Zilpah, and then he has to work another 7 years. And he works another 7 years, and now he's got Rachel and her maid, who's Bilhah, her name is. And so Jacob, this man, has now got 4 women in his life. He's got 2 wives, 2 maidservants or concubines, and Jacob has a favourite. His favourite is Rachel. And Jacob has 12 sons, and the 11th son is Joseph, and Jacob has a favourite. Be careful of favourites. Be careful of favourites. But Jacob has a favourite, and it's Joseph. Rachel's his favourite wife. Joseph's his favourite son. And all the other brothers know that Joseph is the favourite. And what we see in this family of origin, in this Bible story, is that we see some patterns. And here's the patterns. Joseph's family of origin has 4 patterns. The first one is this. There's a pattern across 3 or 4 generations of lies and deceit. Abraham lies about Sarah. Rebekah and Isaac, there's lies going on there. There's just lies, okay? So that's going on. Then there's another pattern. There's a pattern of favouritism by at least one parent. Abraham favoured Isaac. Isaac favoured Jacob. Rebekah favoured Jacob, and but Isaac, there was just all this favouritism going on between them. And then you get Jacob, and that happens as well. And then you also get brothers experiencing a cut-off from one another. Ishmael and Isaac, Jacob and Esau, Joseph and his brothers. There's all this cut-off from family, cut-off from siblings, cut-off. And then there's also poor intimacy in marriages. And so here's the backdrop for the story of where we're heading today is there is this unhealth, emotionally, spiritually, and relationally that's going on. There's betrayal, there's sibling rivalry, there's deceit, there's lies, there's favoritism and sadness. And then we get to Genesis chapter 37, where all of this is in the very first book of the Bible. One of the things I love about the Bible is it doesn't sugarcoat or gloss over the fallenness of humanity. What's different about them all is, we say the God of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. That means they're people of faith. They have faith in God, but there's still a lot of mess in their lives. And then we come to Joseph. Joseph's 17 years old, and Jacob adds, Jacob's favourite is Joseph, and Jacob makes a special coat for Joseph, which just starts more and more trouble. The brothers get jealous, they get angry, they get upset. Joseph goes out to check on them one day, and so what do? They get him and they isolate him. They isolate him. They bully him. They bully him through isolation, and they throw him into a pit. And they put him in a pit, and now that he's isolated from his father and from his family, then they sell him to their second cousins, the Ishmaelites. The Ishmaelites buy the second cousin, they buy Joseph, and then they take him to Egypt, where Joseph is sold as a slave to Potiphar, who works in Pharaoh's household, and so he serves in Potiphar's household. And so what do the brothers do, though? What have they done with his coat? Well, they dip it in goat's blood, and then they deceive their dad, Jacob, by taking Joseph's coat back to Jacob the father, and Jacob assumes that his favourite son is dead. It's an incredible story. And what happens is Joseph, while he's in Egypt, he gets accused of doing something that he didn't do, and he ends up being put into prison. And then he's in prison for between 10 and 13 years. Joseph is in a country that's not his own. He's separated from his father, from his siblings, from his country, from his culture, from his language, from the food that he loves to eat. He is very, very lonely. And if there is anyone in the Bible, apart from Jesus, who has a reason to play the victim card, woe is me, or if ever there is anyone in the Bible who could have been the most bitter, revengeful, sad, depressed person, it was Joseph. He had so much going on for him that wasn't going really well. But what does he do? He breaks the power of the past. Let's dive in. Here's the first thing I want you to remember and take home from today, and that's this. Joseph knew God as loving and large. Joseph knew that even though all this had happened to him, he knew that God was involved. He knew that God was with him, and he trusted God. He had faith in God. He knew God. What's interesting is when Joseph was 17, one of the things that he did, God gave him some dreams. And the dreams were that his brothers would bow down to him. That his brothers would one day bow down to Joseph. And when Joseph told the brothers that, they weren't happy. They weren't happy. Here comes this dream. And that's one of the reasons they threw him in a pit and they sold him, because he had vision and direction, and he had so much going on for him, and God was with him. But they didn't like that, and they were jealous and angry. And so Joseph interprets not only his own dreams, but he interprets the king's dreams. So he's in prison. He's been in prison for 10 to 13 years, and the king, the Pharaoh, has dreams. And so Joseph interprets these dreams, and then the Pharaoh puts him in charge of Egypt and its people. And then 9 years later, there's been 7 years of abundant harvests, and then we're in the second of the 7 years of drought, and 9 years into this. So Joseph is now about 39, 40 years old. He hasn't seen his father or his brothers for 20, 21, 22 years, right? It's a long, long time. He spent more of his life in Egypt than he did in the place of his homeland. And then his brothers are hungry, and Joseph's brothers get sent to Egypt, and look at how Joseph responds. Let's take a look. Genesis, here we are. We're in the scriptures now. Joseph said to his brothers, I am Joseph. They came. They didn't know who he was. He reveals, I am Joseph. And then he says, is my father still living? He's missing his dad. He loves his dad. And then he says, but his brothers were terrified at his presence. Then Joseph said to his brothers, I am your brother Joseph, the one you sold into Egypt. And now do not be distressed, and do not be angry with yourselves for selling me here, because it was to save lives that God sent me ahead of you. For 2 years now there's been famine in the land, and for the next 5 years there's going to be no ploughing or no reaping, but God sent me ahead of you to preserve for you a remnant on earth and to save your lives by a great deliverance. So then it was not you who sent me, but God. God has now made me Lord of Egypt. He's the Prime Minister of Egypt. He is in charge of everything in Egypt bar the throne. And one of the things I love about this story is that Joseph knew God through the valleys and through the tough times. And I want to say to you very clearly today that your life is held in the palm of God's hand, and He cares for you. And no matter what is going on, even if the rubbishy stuff happens, the evil stuff happens towards you, if difficulty comes your way, here's what I want you to see from the story of Joseph, is for you to have the faith like Joseph did. That somehow through it all, through all the chaos, God is still with you. He is with you. He hasn't left you. He hasn't abandoned you. But God is trustworthy. You see, Joseph saw that God is loving and large. God is in control. God is in control. God is ultimately the one who's in control, and He is trustworthy, and we can trust Him. Second thing we see is that Joseph admits to his hurt and his pain and the sadness and losses of his past. Now, I'm sure that I don't know all your pain and your suffering and your loss and your difficulty, but I know that you've got some. I know because I've got stuff, and I'm a human being, and I know that you'll have stuff too. There'll be stuff that's happened in our past, and what we need to do with this is what some people do is some people will just live like the top 9% of the iceberg and just show that to everyone and never allow themselves to go deeper even to the layers that are underneath. Now, by the way, by calling us an iceberg or like an iceberg, I'm not saying we're cold-hearted. I'm not saying we're hard-hearted like an iceberg or cold-hearted. No, that's not what this is about. This is about looking at the layers beneath the surface. And we can't repress our memories. Joseph doesn't block it. Let's see what Joseph does and how, after years of prospering, what does he do after years? Let's see what he does as he prospers after years of suffering. Joseph marries someone. Her name is Asenath. And I want you to listen to the names of the two children that Joseph has. Let's have a look at it. It's in Genesis 41. Before the years of famine came, 2 sons were born to Joseph by Asenath, the daughter of Potipharah. Joseph named his firstborn Manasseh and said, "It is because God has made me forget all my trouble and all my father's household." The second son he named Ephraim and said, "It is because God has made me fruitful in the land of my suffering." Wow. The meaning of the names of Manasseh and Ephraim, Joseph names them, and every time he says those boys' names, Manasseh, come do this with me, come help out. Ephraim, let's go fishing. Every time he said their names, Joseph was admitting to the pain of the past. That he wasn't with his father and his house, and that he had prospered in the land where he's suffering. Joseph has been in Egypt now for 21, 22 years, and in that land, he's in pain. He's suffering. Even though he's prospering and doing well, deep down, in the layers of his soul, he's in pain. He's in pain. And so he admits to that pain. And we see that Joseph is in pain. When Joseph's brothers show up in Egypt, what does he do? I mean, he hasn't seen them in all these years. The last time he saw them, he could see them at the top of the pit, the well that they'd thrown him into. That was the last time he'd seen them when he was sold. And so what does he do? Let's have a look at some verses here. It says here, when Joseph's brothers show up in Egypt, he turned away from them and began to weep. Another time his other brother came. Deeply moved at the sight of his brother, Joseph hurried out and looked for a place to weep. He went into his private room and wept there. See, there's a time sometimes to weep publicly with others. There's a time to weep privately. And he wept so loudly at one time that the Egyptians heard him, and Pharaoh's household even heard about it. You see, Joseph didn't make light of his painful past. He didn't brush over it. And here's the reality for you and me. We've all got hurts. We've all got heartache. We've all got pain and suffering, and what we need to do is we need to recognize it, we need to admit it, we need to own it, and we need to embrace it. And we'll talk a bit more about this in a couple of weeks' time. But it's really important. Here's the third thing we see in Joseph's life as we wrap this up. Joseph rewrote his life script, and he partnered with God to bless people. Remember the family tree of Joseph? That generational stuff that was going on? Lies, sibling rivalry, unhealthy marriage, favoritism happened from one generation to the next. What did Joseph do? He broke it. Joseph broke it. He broke the power of the past. He broke the family of origin, generational themes that were coming through, and he broke it. You see, with everything that had happened in his past, Joseph could have been a liar, could have been a person who played favourites. He could have been a person who was so angry at his brothers that he made it worse for them, especially when he's now in charge. Because Joseph had power. Joseph now had power. But what does Joseph do with his power? He forgives. He forgives his brothers. He could have put them in prison and thrown away the key. He really could have done that. He could have got revenge, but he didn't. And so he used his power to forgive. He used his power to help his brothers see that he loved them and he valued them. And see what happens. Jacob dies, and when Jacob the father dies, they get reunited with Joseph and his dad. But years later, Jacob dies, and soon as he dies, his brothers are absolutely terrified. Because they know that in their family lineage, what happened? What happened between Ishmael and Isaac? What happened between Jacob and Esau? What happened with them as brothers who threw Joseph into the pit and sold him off to Egypt? What's Joseph going to do? What's Joseph going to do? Is he going to be filled with bitterness and revenge? No, he breaks the pattern. Let's look at what it says. This is one of the most beautiful few verses you will read in the book of Genesis. Genesis, it says this. They sent word to Joseph saying, your father left these instructions before he died. Whether he did or not is another matter. But this is what you are to say to Joseph. I ask you to forgive your brothers the sins and wrongs they committed in treating you so badly. Now, please forgive the sins and the wrongs they committed in treating you so badly. Now, please forgive the sins of your servants, of God, your Father. And when their message came to Joseph, what did he do? He wept. Because it takes deep pain to forgive. He wept. His brothers then came and threw themselves down before him. What did they do? Remember his dreams when he was 17? Boys, you're going to bow down to me one day. They were angry and jealous because he said that. And here we are now, 22 years later. And what do? They bow before Joseph. Not to worship him, but the dream that Joseph had gets fulfilled. the dream Joseph has gets fulfilled. And then he says this, don't be afraid. And here's 4 key words for each and every one of us. Am I in the place of God? I can't count. But those words are good words for us to live by. Am I in the place of God? Joseph says. I'll go back to math school one day. He says this, you planned to harm me, but God intended it for good to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives. So then don't be afraid, I'll provide for you and your family and your children. And he reassured them and spoke kindly to them. Joseph truly forgave his brothers. And here's one thing as a pastor I've noticed, is that sometimes in families, the thing that never gets broken from generation to generation is bitterness and revenge. And I would call you and I'd invite you to be like Joseph and to be a forgiver. To be one who breaks that generational pattern and forgive those who've hurt you. Forgive them because you are not in the place of God. And so this morning, I just want to put on screen some questions for reflection. And I'm just going to give a minute of silence. And you might just want to read those questions before we share in communion. Let's have a look at this. I know that today will have stirred up some stuff for you, and that's healthy because we're getting beneath the surface. And being prayed for is not going to solve it, but if you would like prayer, we'd love to support you, to help you in this journey of becoming emotionally healthy as a follower of Jesus. But we're going to offer an opportunity for prayer. But before we do, we're going to share in communion. I want to share a scripture for you because just like Joseph, who provided for his family, relationally, spiritually, emotionally, he cared for them so much. We have a God in Jesus. And Jesus gave us a blessing. And he gave us the blessing of life, of being in his family, of forgiveness, and so much. And so there's a little verse I want to share with you. It says this, Christ died for all, that those who live should no longer live for themselves, but for him who died and was raised again. And that's Jesus.